Welcome to episode 344 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Belgian postal operator bpost has launched its carbon calculator, which estimates the carbon emissions associated with domestic parcels. Karin Enzlin, head of sustainability at bpost, joins me in a moment to discuss how the carbon calculator works and what it could mean for e-commerce delivery. Joining me on the line is Karin Enzlin. Karin is the head of sustainability for bpost, the Belgian postal operator. Karin, great to have you on the podcast. We're going to talk about a really interesting announcement from bpost just recently, the carbon calculator. Before we get into that, can you just give us a bit of a background about what bpost's environmental targets are and how sort of the carbon calculator fits into that?
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me today. So bpost really wants to show leadership in sustainability, and therefore we set clear ambitions to reduce our CO2 emissions by 55% towards 2030 and reach net zero by 2040. bpost takes sustainability really seriously, and also our ambitions are SBTi approved. On top, we signed also the sustainability charter with the Belgian government. So every step we take is really in line to make this world a better world. To show our leadership in sustainability, we developed a carbon reporting and which capture all the different actions we are taking. Just to sum up the most important ones, one is reduce kilometers driven, because the kilometers we don't drive, we don't have any emissions. And therefore, we set a very dense network of PUDO points. And soon we are celebrating our 1,000th locker location in Belgium. Secondly, the kilometers we drive, we like to make them greener. That's our electrification program. bpost probably has the largest fleet of e-vans in Belgium, and we aim to achieve 100% emission-free last mile delivery by 2030. Today, we have around 1,900 e-vans across Belgium. And nice to know is that for bpost, 80% of all e-vans delivered in the country are delivered to bpost. So we take serious steps to make these kilometers greener. In the end, we consolidate everything in our Ecozones. You probably know them very well. So we have about 14 cities where we have Ecozones, and in total more than 80 zip codes where we have emission-free delivery. Next to that, we have another initiatives like greener line haul, greener building strategy, etc.
So with all this background, Karin, tell us a bit about the carbon calculator, why it's important to this overall strategy.
Yeah, we do a lot of efforts, like I told you, and we want to make them visible for the customers. That's really important. E-retailers, just like other companies doing business in Europe, start preparing their CSRD reporting. CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, has as goal to have a transparent and standardized reporting in Europe on sustainability. And that's where we are coming in, because companies need to report on their scope 1, 2, 3, and bpost plays a significant role in the scope 3 emissions. Our objective is to support our customers to reduce their CO2 emissions in their scope 3. There are two main elements. First, choosing for bpost, where we have already ambitious targets, will help them lower their scope 3. Secondly, and there comes the CO2 calculator in, is we give this tool available for our customers that they can make tailor-made improvements. Some examples, they have quite detailed views on first, mid and last mile, on returns, home versus PUDO, so they can direct themselves the way they want to improve their CO2 emissions.
Tell us a bit about how the carbon calculator itself works, or how the carbon calculator tool works, please.
Yeah, it's an automated report, and it reports the carbon emissions per customer per individual parcel. So the calculation is mainly based on real data where we measure the trajectory of the parcel. It means how many kilometers it has been driven, in which type of vehicle, how many stops are made, and very, very important is the weight of the pack. And you see clearly the difference between a parcel which is delivered by bike or by a diesel van, or a parcel which is delivered at home versus a pickup point. And herewith we make some daily updates, of course, on this real data. And multiple views are possible, so you can see as a customer also your scope 1, 2, 3, but you see, for example, already the percentage of emission-free delivered parcels. Today in Belgium, we have 22% of all our parcels are already emission-free delivered. And very interesting to see is your carbon emission evolution over time. Developed this calculator internally because we found that we had a source of information available. We have a lot of data, but of course the calculator is also validated by Van Sot just to be in line and certificated how it needs to be. And we are also compliant to the ISO 14083 and the GLEC framework. It's very important for us to have validating of external parties to make it really a valuable tool. So our emissions, of course, are well to wheel. It includes scope 1, 2, and 3, and we are continuous making updates in function of new norms or new data which we have available. Maybe one important footnote to tell is that it's only for a parcel distributed in Belgium. So maybe it makes it a little bit more easier in that sense that we don't have cross-border and air transport, etc., which is more complex to do. And it's also for the emissions accountable to bpost. It means if e-retailer drops their parcels into a sorting center, that's not taken into account, but also the pickup of the parcel by the end consumer is something we don't take in account for the moment.
I suppose the question that many people listening to this will ask then is, can you do, in addition to reporting, are you able to predict the emissions for individual parcels? Is that something that the tool is able to do?
That's a very interesting question, Ian. Today, the tool is a reactive tool. It means that we are calculating CO2, and I would say the next day we know how many kilometers are driven and everything what I explained. What we do for the moment is we launched it in January. Now we are testing with customers to see what we developed. Is it really in line of their expectation? Maybe we need to fine-tune some data. And also one of the coming days, our tool, which is today internally used by our salespeople, will get an external extension in that sense that customers can look themselves for their CO2 emissions. Based on all these learnings we will have, we will transform it from a reactive tool towards a more predictable model, which is proactive. And this, it's not so easy than it sounds because, the most of our rounds and vehicles are fixed. That's not a problem. But a very important element in the CO2 calculator is the weight of the parcel. And this data, we don't have upfront. So there, a collaboration needs to work between bpost, but also the e-retailer, because he needs to make it work in his checkout to integrate this and also integrate this weight. So yes, we have this on our roadmap, but all the steps for that needs to be taken.
So what about from the other end of things? You've just talked about not having visibility of how the parcel is, prior to the parcel's injection into the bpost network. You clearly don't have visibility of that. What can you see in the future then for helping customers understand the impact of the various delivery options post-delivery? What I mean here is obviously what happens about picking up the parcel if it's delivered out of home. Are we able to? Is that something that's on the horizon?
Yeah, that's something we still need to figure out. Today, this tool exists already. That's a smart job, which is developed by the University of Brussels, the VUB, and Comeos. Comeos is the Belgian federation representing various sectors of commerce and services. And what they do is they develop also a CO2 calculator. It's not based on real data, a part is, but it's also a lot of assumptions. And there they take also into account the end consumer's behavior. And do they pick it up by car, by bike, or by foot? They did some market research around it, and they put also some assumptions. And this is something we need to look at. Do we base ourselves on the same data, or is it something maybe the customer needs to fill into the checkout, and then they have a very easy way to see how much CO2 emissions their parcel will have. But it's for the future. It's not the far future. It's the near future, but we still need to work on that one.
Coming back to the original topic we were talking about here, which was about bpost's own sustainability strategy and really reducing bpost's own emissions, how will the carbon calculator tool help bpost reduce its delivery emissions?
Yeah, like I said, bpost plays a significant role in the Scope 3 emissions of our customers, and we really like to help them by offering this tool. And it's already gets alive. We tested already with some customers, and one of our customers, they told us they had a very high CO2 emission of their returns. So they made a deep dive on it to see how it came, and their parcels were very heavy. So they are looking now for alternatives to see how they can reduce their Scope 3. But another example, which is very clear if you open the CO2 calculator itself, is the difference between home and PUDO delivery. Pickup points, we always set theoretically that there were about 30% less CO2 emissions, but what we see in our calculator that it's even much more, because we deliver about more than 30 parcels in one pickup point, where for home delivery it's around 1.5 parcels. So you see immediately the effect of switching from home to PUDO, what it could bring, and that these are very interesting learnings and very actionable in the end also for the customer.
Just in closing then, Karin, you've talked about how this tool was developed internally, and no doubt there are other postal operators around the world, but not just around the world, there are also delivery companies even within Belgium who are probably looking at this and thinking, what should we be doing? Which raises the obvious question about standardization and regulation. Is there anything happening in Belgium, whether it's through the regulator, BIPT, or through legislation or anything like that, in relation to standardizing or this kind of reporting?
Yes, we started up some first conversations with the BIPT. Not only bpost, but all carriers in Belgium did. I think it's very important to come to one standard. I also believe if everyone does this in his corner and make own interpretations of regulations, then in the end, it doesn't fit to the customer demands. So we are very happy that something happens on a national level in Belgium to standardize this CO2 calculation. And we are really looking forward to the collaborations we could have with them to make this happen.
Now, I think there's a lot of interest, not just around Europe, but around the world in what's happening in Belgium, because there seems to be a lot of attention on the last mile, not just in terms of emissions, but in terms of there's been plenty of focus from the government. Minister De Sutter, I think is her name.
Yeah, indeed.
There's been lots of developments, and if you search through the archive of the Postal Hub podcast, you'll be able to hear various discussions that I've had with various luminaries from the last mile in the academic scene in Belgium talking about this. So there's so much happening. It's always interesting to hear direct from the source. Karin, if people want to get in contact with you to find out more about what bpost is doing, how should people get in contact?
People can contact me via LinkedIn. I think it's the most easy way. Just give me a few days to answer, because I get a lot of questions, but I'm always happy to connect.
I'll put a link to Karin's LinkedIn profile on the episode page, so you can click through there and drop Karin a line to find out more about what bpost is doing. Karin Enzlin, Head of Sustainability for bpost, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
Thanks to you, Ian.
Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Kathleen Cavalier from Mobilise joins me to talk about the attitude behaviour gap and what it means for green delivery. I'll also be joined soon by food services and delivery expert Peter Backman. And we're going to talk about restaurant delivery. Who else is coming soon? Oh, Alan Barry returns. We're going to talk about all kinds of bits and pieces. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. Don't miss any of these episodes. Subscribe to the Postal Hub podcast email newsletter. Go to thepostalhub.com, follow the links to subscribe to the podcast newsletter there. You'll get an email from me when I release each and every new episode. Subscribe to the podcast in your favourite podcast platform, such as Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, and receive each email. You receive it? Access it, whatever. Each episode on the device of your choosing. If you want to email me, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.